Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another morning with BNN and with Bhante Suddhaso and behind the screen, Ayya Soma. So this is the first of 6 meetings that will happen during the weekend on the theme Making Friends with Suffering. So before we get into the retreat, first of all, welcome to Ethan, Jens, Mark, Scott, Geeta, Edward, Bradley, and Sally. And welcome to else that I don't see on the live chat. So we will start by taking the precepts with Bhante. Oh, hello, Richard. Nice to see you as well.
There's also someone at the top of the live chat.
Oh, I missed Marielle and Ella. Thank you, Bhante. So we will start by taking the precepts with Bhante Suddhaso. He will guide us then in metta meditation, and then we'll talk a little bit about the format of the retreat today. All right, sounds good. Thank you, Bhante, for leading us as usual. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, so there's a link to take the 8 precepts, and we can start right now.
So, taking the 8 precepts for the day, making a commitment to practice some basic morality and renunciation principles as a foundation for retreat practice. And actually, it's a foundation for Buddhist practice in general. So morality and renunciation form the basis of all Buddhist practice, the basic necessary fundamentals of Buddhist practice. So taking the 8 precepts is not something to be lightly swept aside. It's an important element of things. An important element of establishing the conditions which allow one to make progress on the path. So as we've done in the past, we'll do this call and response style. So I'll recite one line and then everyone can recite after me. So Ayya Soma will be leading the response chanting. So you can chant together with Ayya Soma, repeating after me. So we'll start. Please repeat after me. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
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 Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddham saranam gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammam saranam gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sangham saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddham saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sangham saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddham saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatyampi dhammam saranam gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatyampi sangham saranam gacchami.
Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipata veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
Brahmacharya veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Abrahmacharya veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musavada veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
Surameraya majjapamadatthana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Surameraya majjapamadatthana veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
Vikala bhojana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Vikala bhojana veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
Nacha gita vadita vesukadasana.
Nacha gita vadita visukadasana.
Mala gandha vilepana dharana mandana vibhusanatthana.
Mala gandha vilepana dharana mandana vibhusanatthana.
Veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
Uchasayana mahasayana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Uchasayana mahasayana veramani sikkhapadam samadhiyami.
Silena sugating yanti, silena bhoga sampada, silena nibbhuting yanti, tasma silang visodhaye.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, so we can start by getting in meditation posture. Settling into position. Letting the body be still. Taking a few deep breaths, relaxing the body with each breath. Using the breath like a broom to sweep out all the dust from the mind, sweeping out all the thoughts and ideas, memories and plans, sweeping clean the breath, with the breath sweeping clean the mind. Then let your breath return to its natural rhythm. Letting your eyes relax, your forehead relax, your whole face relax, and a slight smile come to your lips. Just enjoying this moment, enjoying this peaceful moment of sitting here with a relaxed body, a clean mind, happy smile, nowhere to go, nothing to do. Just enjoying this peaceful moment of stillness, silence, of serenity. So dropping any thought of past and future, just focusing on feeling happiness right here and now in this peaceful moment. You might silently recite, "May I be happy. May I be happy. May I be happy." Just keeping those gentle eyes, that soft smile. Keep building up that pure, gentle wish. May I be happy. May I be happy. No conditions, no restrictions, no limitations. Just this simple wish. May I be happy. It's like being wrapped in a warm hug by a loving friend. Feeling of safety, joy, being cared for. We produce it within ourselves, caring deeply for this being right here, this one. May I be happy. May I be happy. And as the feeling of gentle, loving kindness becomes more deeply rooted in the heart, we can open it up to be universal, wishing, may everyone be happy. May everyone be happy. May everyone be happy. No conditions, no restrictions, completely all pervasive, all inclusive, wishing for absolutely everyone, all sentient beings, near or far, human or non-human, good or evil, absolutely everyone without any exceptions at all. May everyone be happy. May everyone be happy. May everyone be happy. And as you repeat these words, keep building up the feeling of loving kindness, the mind state of benevolence, of gentleness, of caring. May everyone be happy. Keep brightening that light of loving gentleness. You can relax your posture, do a little stretching if you wish.
Right. Thank you, Bhante, for that beautiful meditation. And welcome to a few more friends: Dan, James, Yasmin, Catalina, David, and Elaine, who though has to leave as her daughter is being released from the hospital, from neonatal intensive care.
Great. Happy to hear that she's recovering.
Yeah,
Good.
sadhu. She says she's recording this. Right. And pass it on to Bhante so he can perhaps share some thoughts on the theme of the day, which is making friends with suffering, and then give us a few ideas on the structure of the retreat, or the lack of structure of the retreat, as it may be. And without further ado, I'll pass it on to him.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. So this theme, making friends with dukkha, was not one that I came up with. It was actually Ayya, who's a senior bhikkhuni, who's the co-abbess of Dhammadharani Monastery in California, who had been scheduled to come here and lead a retreat on this subject prior to the global plague, which has thrown many plans awry. So for some reason, rather than invite me to select a new topic of my choosing, Ayya decided we're just going to carry on with the same topic. So this is always a bit interesting to be handed somebody else's topic and somebody else's ideas and then expected to carry them forward, which basically means I'm just going to talk about whatever I want, and it might be loosely related to the topic or it might not be. We'll see. Ayya rolling her eyes. This is actually a really fun game. Like, count how many times Ayya rolls her eyes in the course of any given session. It's actually really interesting. I often don't report her eye. Oh, there she goes again. I often don't report her eye rolling, because if I did, it would take up half the time. I would be like, so, and then, oh, Ayya rolling her eyes. So when we sit down to meditate, oh, she rolled her eyes again. And then we would never get anywhere. So anyway, so the topic, making friends with dukkha. See, this is the problem with using somebody else's topic. My mind immediately goes like, what does this actually mean? What are we talking about? Anyway, so first off, what is dukkha? So dukkha is commonly translated as suffering, but it's a very broad catch-all term which refers to any kind of unpleasantness or discomfort, unease, discontent, that feeling that something's wrong. A feeling that something's wrong with our experience, something's not right, something's not pleasant, something's not enjoyable. So that's dukkha. And whether we like it or not, it's an important part of our experience because it's here. The only people who don't experience dukkha are fully enlightened beings. Everybody else has some degree of dukkha. So even a non-returner living in the Pure Land still has some amount of dukkha. It's very subtle, it's very mild, but they still have some amount of dukkha. So everyone who's not fully enlightened has some amount of dukkha. And it's through understanding dukkha and the cause of dukkha that we are able to let go of it, to go beyond it, to be unaffected by it. So that first step of understanding dukkha is extremely important. And this goes all the way back to the Buddha's first sutta, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, which we talked about on Vesak Day recently. And at that day, I pointed out that the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta is technically not the first teaching the Buddha gave, but it is the first formal sutta that we have from the Buddha's teaching career. And in that, the Buddha, he starts off by, first off, he says that one should not engage in either sensual indulgence or in self-torture. So that's an important point. We should not be recklessly pursuing sensual pleasure, but we should also not be intentionally making ourselves miserable. Neither one of those is proper. Then he introduces the idea of the Noble Eightfold Path. So briefly mentioning the Noble Eightfold Path. Then he gives a short description of the Four Noble Truths. And then he says that for each one of these Four Noble Truths, there are three aspects, three modes, three stages of progress. So he says there is the noble truth of dukkha. So knowing that there is dukkha. So that's the first step, is just knowing that there is dukkha, knowing that there is suffering, there is dukkha. The second step is fully understanding it. So parinyata. So fully understood, fully understanding. So the Buddha says dukkha is parinyaya. It's something that should be fully understood. That's the second mode of the First Noble Truth. It must be fully understood. And then the third mode is when it has been fully understood. Parinyata. That means it has been thoroughly understood, thoroughly known. Then at that point, then one can come to understand the origin of dukkha, and so on through the Four Noble Truths. But it starts with that. Our first major step is to fully know dukkha. And in order to fully know dukkha, we have to be willing to look at it, to see it, to feel it, to become familiar with it. And this is quite challenging because our usual approach is to ignore dukkha, or to try to cover it up with something pleasant, or to try to pretend it's not there, or to distract ourselves from it, to do anything we can to not pay attention to dukkha, to not feel dukkha. Or sometimes we do the opposite, which is that we just blindly wallow in dukkha without making any effort to really know it and understand it. Oh, life is so awful, so miserable. Oh. But we're not really trying to understand the dukkha. We're just wallowing in this self-centered mode of misery, which is actually coming out of attachment to self-identity. We think, I am the dukkha-ful one. I am the miserable one. I am the suffering one. I am the depressed one. Me. So much dukkha. So much losing. Well, that's all just me. And it's not actually building up any understanding of dukkha. It's just wallowing in our self-identity of the one who suffers. So I get this with one of my sisters. So one of my sisters, she's actually gotten a bit better these days, but it used to be every time I talked to her, she would always go on her "oh, poor me" rants. She was like, "Oh, life is so terrible. I'm so miserable. Everything's so bad, so awful. Ooh, poor me. And I would start asking some pointed questions, as we Buddhists like to do. And she would recoil from actually examining her dukkha, making any effort to really understand what was causing it, or doing anything at all to overcome it. And eventually it became clear to me that she was just interested in wallowing in her Pollyanna, like, woe is me, life has inflicted me with torment, oh, terrible. She just loved dwelling in this melodramatic state of mind, all built around her self-identity of the one who suffers. But she wasn't actually the least bit interested in learning to understand that dukkha, or let go of it or go beyond it. Because that would break her self-identity, and that would just be terrible. So that's not, once again, what we're talking about when we talk about making friends with dukkha, understanding dukkha. It's not just wallowing in our self-identity like a pig rolling around in feces. Like, that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to deeply understand the nature of our dukkha with the goal of transcending that dukkha. So this is really important. So this also comes up sometimes when discussing Four Noble Truths with non-Buddhist people, is they say things like, why would you want to look at your suffering? Why don't you like go and do something happy instead? And it's like, well, that's kind of like you break your leg and someone's like, hey, dude, I think you've got a broken leg. You should go and check that out. And the person's like, nope, I'm fine. Nothing wrong here. I'm just going to go watch some television and drink beer. Everything's fine. It's like, no, friend, it's not fine. It's not fine. You need to see a doctor, or else that's just going to keep getting worse. So similarly, we need to be willing to actually deeply understand our dukkha in order to be able to overcome it. So recognizing that. Again, first, very important, we're coming to an understanding of our dukkha so that we can transcend it, not so we can wallow in our self-identity of the miserable one, the dukkha-ful one. But fully understanding it, once again, means that we need to be willing to face it directly and feel it thoroughly. So a meditation practice, which I've been encouraging for years now, and again, this is not something that you just do while sitting in the full lotus position holding still, but actually something that you do all day long. No eye rolling? I mentioned full lotus and she didn't roll her eyes. Impressive. She actually hasn't rolled her eyes since I mentioned her tendency to roll her eyes constantly during my Dhamma talks. So maybe this is the secret. I just start every talk by mentioning Ayya. Oh, she rolled her eyes! There we go! This is, oh, she did it again! She did it again! Good times. What are we up to? Is that number 4 or number 5? So count the eye rolling. This is fun. Now she's covering her face so I can't see her rolling her eyes. Anyway, geez, so now I've lost my train of thought. What was I talking about?
There's some amusing emojis.
Goal of transcending dukkha.
Yes, goal of transcending dukkha. Yeah.
So not in the full lotus position. But
Oh, yeah. So all throughout your day, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, just ask yourself, where is the dukkha? Or what is the dukkha in this moment? And look at your mind. Look for the feeling of dukkha in the mind. And when you first do this practice, this can be a little bit baffling because much of the time we actually feel pretty okay. Sometimes we actually feel pretty good. So you might in those times be like, dukkha? But there isn't any dukkha in this moment. To which I say, look closer. Look closer. And you'll see it. It's always there. Like a splinter in your mind. It's always there. Needling at you. Rubbing you a little bit the wrong way. Kind of like walking around with a little pebble in your shoe. Too small for you to go through the effort of taking your shoe off and getting it out, but just big enough that it's always irritating you a little bit. And when you've got a little bit of a headache, not enough to take a pill, but just enough so it irritates you a bit. So what is that dukkha? Looking at the dukkha, looking for the dukkha in each moment. That subtle feeling of wrongness, subtle feeling that something is not quite right. Look for that feeling. And you'll see it if you're willing to. You'll feel it if you're willing to. It's always there. It only goes away when you attain full enlightenment. Until then, it's there. There's times when it's very strong, and there's times when it's very weak, but it's always there. The other thing you'll notice is that sometimes there's a story attached to the dukkha, such as, I am annoyed because the Italian is always late for everything. Sometimes there's a story. And often we really believe that story. We really believe that our dukkha is caused by the Italian being late all the time. Which, if you've ever spent much time with an Italian, you might relate to this story very clearly and directly. She's rolling her eyes again. Do you even realize how often you roll your eyes? She's shaking her head. Apparently, she doesn't realize how often she rolls her eyes. But sometimes there's no story. Like you look at the dukkha and you realize this is just pure, raw, senseless dukkha. There's no clear reason for this. It's not dukkha because the cat snubbed me this morning. It's not dukkha because the breakfast wasn't what I wanted. It's not dukkha because we're out of yogurt. It's not dukkha because I couldn't find the maple syrup. It's just pure, senseless dukkha. There doesn't seem to be any particular reason for it. And this starts to get really fascinating because then you can start to examine the feeling of dukkha without getting lost in the stories. Because the stories that we have are just justifications for why we're feeling dukkha. The stories don't mean anything. They're just stories. They're just excuses. They're pretenses. They're not real. They're just pretenses that we have to try to explain away our dukkha. But they don't actually help us understand our dukkha at all. Dukkha is not caused by somebody else being late, even though she's late all the time and causes lots of problems. That's not why we're feeling dukkha. It's not your headache that's causing you dukkha. It's just a headache. That's not dukkha. Where is the dukkha? Look at it. Feel it. Get familiar with it. Be willing to know it thoroughly, completely, and directly. And start to look. What's underneath it? What's causing it? And you might start to become aware of the subtle trigger in our mind. That little button we keep pushing in our mind that keeps producing dukkha. And as we see it, sometimes what comes up is a sense of despair. The realization that we're doing this to ourselves for no good reason whatsoever. The sudden, shocking realization that not only are we masochistic, but we are deeply addicted to our own masochism. So strongly addicted to masochism that we can't stop even when we see it. Even when we see for ourselves how much we're hurting ourselves, we can't seem to stop. So that can bring up a feeling of despair, feeling of hopelessness. But don't lose hope. Because even recognizing that senseless, baseless masochism is already a huge step in the right direction. It's knowing the second noble truth. It's knowing the source of dukkha. the origin of dukkha. It's knowing what causes dukkha to arise. And it's recognizing that it's something that we're doing within our own mind. Once again, it has nothing to do with what's outside. Those are just excuses. Something inside. It's an activity of mind that we engage in, which means it's something that we can learn how to control. It's not necessarily easy. In fact, it's not easy, but it can be done. It can be controlled. It can be stopped. So the duty the Buddha gives for the cause of dukkha is pahatava, which means it is to be cast aside. It is to be abandoned. It is to be dropped. So as you start to become aware of that subtle mental activity of generating our own dukkha, then we can start to stop. We can start to relax that muscle, to relax that internal activity of generating dukkha. And when we do that, then we start to get in touch with the third noble truth. We start to get in touch with what it's like when dukkha starts to fade away. So the Buddha says that the ending of dukkha, the cessation of dukkha, is something that is to be known for oneself. So in Pali, the word is sachikattabha, which literally means to see with your own eyes. So in other words, to notice when dukkha is fading. So this doesn't necessarily mean the complete permanent cessation of dukkha upon enlightenment, but it can also just mean noticing that when we relax the cause of dukkha a little bit, then the dukkha fades a little bit. To be aware of that is realizing the cessation of dukkha. And it's really important to pay attention to that, because this is what gives us the faith that the complete cessation of dukkha is possible. It's what gives us faith that we're on the right track. Faith that there is an end in sight. Faith that our practice is worth doing. Faith that our practice brings good results. But the experience of this, it's a bit like trying to relax a muscle spasm. If anyone's had this experience of a spasming muscle, and you're trying to relax it, like it just keeps tensing, and you're trying to relax it. You like relax a little bit, and then it tenses. You try to relax a little bit, and tense. Like this muscle spasm, which seems uncontrollable, and you can only relax it a little bit every now and then, and it goes right back to spasming. It seems uncontrollable. But as time goes by, even though it's difficult, we notice there are moments when we can relax. And for a brief instant, the spasming stops. The muscle goes soft, peaceful, for a moment. And then the spasm starts again. It seems uncontrollable, but now we know it's not uncontrollable. Now we know there's something we can do. We know there's a way to stop the spasm. Well, that's what dukkha is like. Dukkha is like a mind spasm. A mind spasm that we've been caught in for countless lifetimes. but that with training and effort, we can learn how to relax so that the spasm starts to settle down. But it all starts with that willingness to directly face our dukkha, to directly feel our dukkha, to completely know it, to touch it, to feel it, to examine it, to know it wordlessly. And again, dropping all the stories, and just getting in touch with the feeling of dukkha itself, moment by moment by moment. So this is the practice I'd like to recommend for the day. All throughout the day, wherever you go, whatever you do, whatever posture you're in, whatever activity you're in, constantly look, where is the dukkha? What does it feel like? Really trying to know the feeling of dukkha thoroughly and clearly in each moment. Recognizing it for what it is. This seemingly uncontrollable mind spasm that through full awareness, we can relax. So also relax throughout this day. Let the mind relax. Again, for those who've had muscle spasms, the solution is not to tense up more. That doesn't actually work. The solution is to relax. The spasm comes to an end on its own. So, if there's any questions, I'll go ahead and take some questions. Do we have any questions or comments? Maybe things about...
There was definitely a lot of comments.
Great, let's go ahead and take the comments.
And there are some questions. There are comments like dukkha, 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 dukkha.
Careful it doesn't become a song. And I'm like, dukkha, 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 dukkha. Yeah, that's not meditation. That's just wasting time.
Then there is, so Jen, welcome Jen. She was a little bit late and she goes, wow, it's like Bhante read my message about waking up late. I'm always late. Is that an Italian thing? He's doing the Jedi mind thing, mind tricks again. And James says, Jen, don't worry. Throw some olive oil in a pan and eat good food and roll your eyes like me and Ayya. Paisano late gang. Anyway, so there's also some eye rolling emojis. And let me get James also says, real talk, a pebble got in my shoe during walking meditation yesterday and I kept it in there for sense-based awareness. Interesting. So let me go to the questions. Boone is asking, Bhante, can you explain more about Sankhara Dukkata? Samyutta Nikaya 45.165 Dukkata Sutta.
So I would have to look at that sutta to see exactly what the Buddha, what context the Buddha mentioned it in. So Sankhara Dukkha, I've usually seen explained as being the dukkha that comes from experiencing sankharas. So sankharas are conditional phenomena, individual objects, which from the perspective of Buddhist metaphysics, there are no sankharas, there are no separate objects, there are no distinct phenomena. But we have the experience of there being separate objects because of our delusions. Because of our fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of the world, we relate to the world as though it was composed of separate, distinct objects, even though fundamentally there aren't any. So this is at the start of dependent origination, avijja paccaya sankhara. So from ignorance, there's the experience of sankhara, the experience of separate, distinct objects. So this is the foundation of all of our dukkha, is this basic misunderstanding of thinking that the world is composed of separate, distinct, individually existing objects. So that creates this constant feeling of discomfort in the mind. Because we're trying to inhabit a dream world which is continually clashing with reality. So that creates cognitive dissonance, sankhara dukkha. That's one way of explaining it anyway.
And Gabriella said, yeah, it's relatable with the muscle spasm. And James said, not a joke, I had a muscle spasm in full lotus right before Bhante said that.
Well, bonus points for sitting in full lotus.
And Gabriella is asking, how do we experience dukkha without feeding it or intensifying it?
Yeah, that's something that you'll need to learn on your own, because we pay close attention to it, but also don't build it up. Just know what's present. Know when it's there, know when it's not there. Know when it's strong, know when it's weak. But there's no need to build it up. In fact, as you become clearly aware of dukkha, then you have no interest in building it up. You have no interest in fueling it. You might find that you keep fueling it because of your deep set subconscious habits, but you'll also find that you have no interest or desire to fuel it because it's uncomfortable. It's not pleasant. Yeah, so the solution is just to look very closely at it. Again, it's like the attitude of an impartial observer, wanting to know, but not wanting to interfere. Because if we interfere, then we don't really know what it is. It's like a scientist performing an experiment. If they interfere with the experiment, then it ruins the whole thing. They don't learn anything from the experiment. They learn through careful observation, but without interfering. That's the attitude that we want to take towards the examination of dukkha.
And then he says, Bhante, the involuntary movements of the mind, when it goes after something, anything, that it conjures up on its own, this is what disturbs my mind, correct?
I would encourage you to look really closely at what you think are involuntary movements of mind. The vast majority of what we think of as involuntary is actually subtle activity based on volition. So look closer. There are some things which are in fact involuntary, but those have a distinctly different feeling. I usually describe them as being like echoes. And that's what it's like. It feels like an echo bouncing in the mind. It's a very different experience than when you're actually speaking. When you're speaking, it has a particular feeling. When you're hearing an echo of your own voice, that has a very different feeling. Again, if you live somewhere where there's canyons, where you can experience echoes, or maybe sometimes large rooms with the proper shape, you can get a good echo. Just go into a place like that and call out, notice what it feels like when you're actively producing a sound, and then listen and notice what it feels like when you're just hearing an echo. And you'll notice that there's a distinctly different feeling. It's the same with the mind. Look closely at any mental activity, and you'll notice that it either feels like talking or it feels like listening to an echo. But that those are very different feelings. Very different. Okay?
Gabriella, this is beautiful scene. Okay, I will try to be like I'm on a mind safari. Mind safari is actually pretty great. I like that as a title of something for the future.
Could be good for a week-long retreat.
Yeah. Well, if you'll see Mind Safari week-long retreat, you'll see the origin of the name Mind Safari. Credit to Gabriella.
For the picture, we can have Ayya Soma wearing a safari hat.
And Bradley's asking, so this is like understanding what the Buddha was saying in the simile of the arrow / dart, seeing and understanding pleasant, painful, and neutral feelings without the usual story, building, and reaction.
Yeah, that's an example. Yeah.
All right, that's
it.
That's it for now. So if there are any other questions, feel free to put them in the live chat. In the meanwhile, Bhante, if you want to share some words of encouragement for the day or pointers before we meet again at 2:30 p.m.
So Ayya Soma and I were talking just before the session about how to structure the day. So we'd like to suggest that you not structure the day, besides the live stream, so 2:30 and 7:30. Otherwise, don't structure the day. So follow the 8 precepts. Don't distract yourself with unnecessary things. We encourage you to turn off your phone if possible. Not engage in anything that's not directly Dhamma related. Of course, it's good to spend much of your time doing sitting and walking meditation, but also it's fine to rest, to relax, to not do anything. That's fine too. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, though, constantly look at your dukkha. Constantly look. Where is the dukkha? What is the dukkha? Look. Feel it. Know it. Again, you can feel it every moment, like a splinter in your mind. I think that's a quote from The Matrix. Splinter in your mind. Yeah, it is. Yeah, Morpheus. He says that at one point, like a splinter in your mind. Great quote. The best quote. So I've got the best quotes. Seriously. So much weight. So there's... yeah, look for that feeling of dukkha. Even if you're just like lounging on your couch, watch the dukkha. Know the dukkha. Know it clearly and fully and precisely. And observe it peacefully and serenely with the attitude of curiosity and acceptance. And you'll start to realize that you do have the ability to let the dukkha fade. We do have the ability to interrupt the mind spasms. It can be done, but it requires deep, thorough, clear knowing of dukkha in order for it to be possible to interrupt the spasm. And that interrupting of the spasm is, once again, it's done through relaxing the mind without losing its sharpness and clarity. This is very important. This is not spacing out. So I remember at one point in the early days of BI, Ayya Soma managed to get one of her brothers to come to one of the meditation classes. First and only time this has ever happened. And as far as I know, the first and only time her brother has ever done anything close to meditation. And apparently he didn't understand the instructions at all, because afterwards he said, I didn't need that. I already knew how to space out. So clearly he didn't understand the instructions, because it's of course not about spacing out at all. No, it's actually quite the opposite. It's about developing a sharp, clear, precise awareness of our experience. So wherever you are, even if you're slumped on your sofa, develop a sharp, clear, precise knowing of dukkha, the dukkha that's present in your mind right now. And try to let that spasming settle down. Try to let the mind spasm smooth out. Okay? So that's your practice for the day. In a relaxed, gentle, peaceful manner, make friends with your dukkha. And try to let the spasms settle down. Okay? And we'll see you again at 2:30, where Ayya Soma will theoretically be talking about Dhamma, and I will be sitting where she sits, rolling my eyes constantly. So we'll see you then.
All right. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Bhante. Perhaps at 2:30, Bhante will actually be sitting there. Who knows? Uncertainty, impermanence.
Or maybe May. Who knows?
All right. Well, have a great morning, and we'll see you in a couple of hours.